Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cut and Splice. This is Jason,
And this is Matt.
And this is Gil.
and tonight we're going to be talking about the movie T-34. It's a 2018 film, Russian film from director Alexei Sidorov. Probably saying that wrong. Sorry. And basically, it's a tank movie, a World War II tank movie. And I suggested this one because of a number of reasons. One, I know that none of us had seen it yet. I had heard some interesting reviews about the action in the movie, and I know that Matt tends to be very fond of Russian films. So I suggested it, and here we all are.
That is an interesting mix. I was thinking of
Yeah.
Matt too. It's like, well, at least it's Russian. As far as like, not that Matt doesn't like action. He likes action too, but yeah.
Yeah.
But he likes the more gloomy, not that this wasn't gloomy at times, but the very gloomy Russian movies.
I don't want to, as usual in this podcast, we're going to discuss the movie and talk about our recommendations and what we thought about it and everything, and then go into spoilers. But I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to simply say that I'm going to guess before he even says a word that Matt would have probably preferred this movie to have a much higher, like, death count for the main characters, for the good guys, air quotes. But that's just my guess.
It's not even really that. I would like it to have had more of like the more deaths, like, you know, Mellish at the end of Saving Private Ryan. I mean, if you just had one of those, you know, that, like,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
the you know, like the slow knife into the chest, and like somebody that you're really rooting for is just losing this fight, and you want to believe that he's going to find a way to win, and he just doesn't, and it just rips your heart out. You know, like, yeah, I would have preferred it if there was something like that.
Well, we could
But
definitely go into that later for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
with the spoilers section.
Yeah.
I would like to mention that I found it interesting that the marketing for this distribution for this movie, between the fact that it's pretty much on every streaming service for free, and then the fact that on Prime, and I'm sure on some others, it's dubbed to English.
Yep.
Which would make it very, very gloomy for me to watch that way if I had to.
I watched the first scene in that way, and I had to turn it off. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, I do wonder who are those people that I think those people are the same people that used to complain that they have what's those black lines on the top and bottom of the TV? Why can't you just like
I'm gonna say that in that Venn diagram there's a pretty big overlap.
Yeah, and then also and then on I watched it on the Roku channel, and there at least it was in Russian and German, but it was named Iron Fury with an exclamation. At least in the title, and the poster is just Iron Fury, but actually in the subtitle below on the website, it's with an exclamation mark. So
that's strangely appropriate.
I wonder if the filmmakers had something to do with that. They were just trying to push this movie because, as I will say, it's got a little bit for everybody. That's what I would say. As far as like good entertainment, it does have good action. For people that like war movies, it's very much a war movie. It's got like a dash of anti-war, but not going like all the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's got throws a little bit of romance there, which I feel like was one of the the weakest part of it.
Definitely forced.
Very forced.
So I was gonna say, since Matt is always quick to remind us of this, let me just basically say, for anyone who's never even heard of this before, essentially this is a World War II film from the perspective of some Russian soldiers, and it's about some Russian POWs are captured by the Germans, and this one particular tank commander is, for various reasons, he is stuck in a situation where he's forced to pick a crew to run a captured Russian tank in drills, in kind of a suicide type of drill against German tanks with live rounds, and it's kind of all about that, big tank battles and kind of a big. It's pretty exciting. So that's essentially the gist of it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, for sure, it's good to cover the and it starts a bit earlier than that because it shows
it does,
sets
yeah,
up the characters by having him deal with one ordeal of which to some degree, maybe pacing wise, I feel like that was one part of the movie that could have been made a bit quicker. It is a over 2 hour movie, and I feel like for what's here, this probably should have been at a max, like a 2 hour movie. But it really seems like they go all out. It's a very attempt at like an epic Russian action war movie. They put a lot into it. Definitely reminiscent of like all the bullet time slow motion.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If they took the slow motion out, it probably would have been under 2 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. I agree that it could have been. I would have liked 15 to 20 minutes less, just to tighten up a few areas, and it would have really been really good. Although that being said, I don't think it has a bad pace. I've definitely seen movies that that trudge along a lot worse than this one.
I think we brought this up too. I think when we talked about the lives of others. This is another example of one of these foreign films, and maybe this is why they're marketing it the way it is. That is very normal pace. It's not really a foreign film in the sense that it's very slow paced, like very low on dialogue. It's a very borderline Hollywood type of movie, but it's still, there's no denying that there's a touch of the cultural aspects of like the personalities of the characters and the story and their sides of the war. All that I think is done pretty well. It's shot really well. I almost feel like too well at times. So maybe somebody watched a bit too many Janusz Kaminski lighting schemes. But overall, as far as my reaction to it is, it's mixed. Like it's definitely mixed because of all those elements. It's a cocktail that is enjoyable, but I felt there's too much of almost everything. Like a few things felt a bit too forced. Like they could have been a little bit less bullet time or cannon time with the slow motion and the pacing portion of it. But I like the performances. I liked what they were going for as far as the fighting spirit, of the Russians and the situation that soldiers find themselves in war. The translator as well. It brings like another aspect of it. But yeah, I would probably give it like a 6. And I would mostly recommend it. And it's funny enough, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that's into foreign films. I would recommend it to someone that's like, was into war films or likes tanks or and that's why it's called T-34, I guess. It's in the title.
Yeah, that's I think that's the kind of tank that the Russian tank that they're in.
Yeah, the really fancy. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's fancy, but it's the tank they were in.
No, it was high quality for the time. Yeah.
Was it?
Which by the way, the tanks that are that's been designed in Israel since then will kick its ass very easily.
I'm sure most modern tanks would. Yeah.
Oh no, most modern tanks, but there's like specific tanks that were designed. I think co-designed by the U.S. and Israel, like in the 70s and 80s, that are like Very, very sophisticated. There was I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but there was a limited series of sorts, or like a Israel version of Band of Brothers, like a 10-episode show,
Really?
of like the Yom Kippur War, when there
Oh,
was like
wow.
the surprise
yeah.
attack, and the Israel almost collapsed, like Israeli army almost collapsed because of the surprise attack, and a big chunk of it, there's different storylines happening at the same time, different fronts, and one of the fronts is a unit of like a tank unit, with a few crews and stuff, and it kind of plots their way through the war, and it's very interesting. It's got some interesting, like this movie, strategic things that tanks do, and it's kind of fun. It's on HBO Max,
What's it
and
called?
The Valley of Tears, I think it's called.
Huh.
And
Sounds
funny,
Jewish.
yeah, and that Valley of Tears, not that Valley
Yeah.
of Tears.
Okay.
And funny enough, it also has an English dubbed version on there, just like silly. I had to keep switching it every time I logged in, just to switch it from the English to Hebrew. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say real quickly, I was reading in the trivia thing on IMDb, according to this whatever thing in there, it says that the director and writer, his goal was, this is a quote, to tell the story of the war in such a way to captivate the young and not cause controversy among those who still keep the great patriotic war in their memory, which I personally translated to the fact that he was hoping to make a World War II film that would be interesting to young viewers without offending older people.
All of this is bolstering basically my overall assessment.
Well, but before you give it, all I was trying to say is that
All right.
while I don't necessarily, I'm not trying to say that that was a brilliant idea or a terrible idea at all. I do think that that's more or less what he uh, achieved. I think in doing so, I think he also made the movie a little weaker because it could have been stronger in a lot of other areas that we can get into a lot of those details later. But I think if at least the general stated goal that he had for the movie, it is an exciting action war film about tanks. And I mean, I don't think there's any, to my knowledge, this isn't based on any particular true story or anything like that. But I mean, it's probably the kinds of stuff depicted in this movie are probably less historically inaccurate than some of the American World War II movies like U-571 and stuff like that,
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this is a fictional movie, but
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure.
mean,
Yeah.
like, they're
Oh, and then lastly,
Uh,
I'd say it's about a 7.
okay.
Yeah, maybe Matt will convince me to lower my rating.
I think that this movie is the Joe Bowers of movies. Like
Don't know who that is.
Yeah,
Luke
me
Wilson,
neither.
Luke Wilson's character in Idiocracy,
Oh, I see.
like absolutely perfectly average, like a 5 in every way. like like every good decision the director made, it was countered by a bad decision. Like every moment that I thought was like, oh wow, that was kind of cool, it was immediately countered with like, oh, that's just garish. Every bit of dialogue that I thought is like, oh, this is a really cool moment of like moments of camaraderie among comrades, that because that's super insightful, is followed by like dialogue that would it's like so sweet that it was giving me diabetes. I mean, it's everything that was good in the movie was immediately counteracted by something that was bad in the movie. So like this is like the most even 5 that I could ever give to a movie. It was just like smack dab in the middle, perfectly average.
The thing is, I would just say that for me, average is 7, but when I rank out of 10, but I understand that you just think that it's every bad thing had a good thing, so it's like somewhere in the middle. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that we need to get into it or anything, but just throwing this out there, Gil, if your average is a 7, I think you need to watch a lot more bad movies.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I do. I could easily give this movie a 5. What I give it props mainly, and I could do the whole thing what I did with the Way of the Gun, where I just count all the good things about it, and then I'll get to 2 or 3 or 4, but like start at 0. But what I do like about it, and I will say another thing that's kind of like I wasn't crazy about it. It's also a bit of a propaganda movie, especially this day and
Oh
age.
yeah.
It's very much
definitely.
like but what how many American movies are also like
Many.
fostering egos, and yeah, it's definitely that's the main fault that it has, that it's too Hollywood. But I give it props for doing that well. Almost like not in the same way that say RRR was. They didn't reinvent the wheel or anything, but they're really like, let's really go for it. Let's like make a crazy movie and be completely outrageous and have fun with it. Similar to again, I guess the Tarantino's handprints are like everywhere. Like it's in the sense of like this like revenge story. Let's have some Russians really kick some German ass.
Yeah.
That type of thing. I really think Tarantino, like, I just like that fucker is onto something. Yeah, when was Inglourious Bastards? That was before 2018, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was well before. That was
Well
like
before. I don't remember years of movies.
It doesn't matter. It was a long time.
Long time ago. It's 2010 or something.
Yeah, that was before I moved to DC. So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Anyway.
but I do think that this movie was for the most part well done and just as enjoyable entertainment. But I can easily be convinced by Matt and say that it was more like a 4 or 5.
I mean, it's just one of those things where like there were moments when like the music like goes from like Tchaikovsky in an appropriate moment, and then sometimes it's like a mishmash of like Hans Zimmer and Philip Glass, and then
it was so over the top.
And then the music swells like with a dun 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 at a moment when it's about as surprising as Mrs. Peacock did it with the candlestick in the billiard room or something. It's just it was. I feel like Peter Griffin in the safe room with his flooding, and they're all about to die, and he's saying that he didn't care for the Godfather, and so it insists upon itself. But I mean, it does insist upon itself in so many ways, and I don't. That's the thing. I think that there's a story in this movie, and I don't think that the director or the writer ever knew what the story was. I mean, there's something really poignant and coherent that you can tell in this context, and I just don't think they ever fleshed out what it was. They were just too focused on like basically directing a 2.5 hour long music video.
Yeah, to some degree. Well, I think you convinced me. I'm dropping mine to a 5.
Yeah.
But
it's a little premature, but okay.
I forgot about the music. It's kind of funny. Like when the movie ended, there's that swelling music.
Yeah.
And I was like, this sounds familiar. Let me like Shazam it or something. I Google now, you can search songs. And then it comes up and it's like from the movie, like it's from the composers of the movie. I'm like, but this is so derivative of something else. Like it sounds like something that I've heard before. There's no way I'm hearing this for the first time, unless since 2018, a bunch of trailers have been using this music, and that's why it's on my mind. like it's possible. Like maybe I can look up trailers that use the music, but in any case, it's the music was really out there. Like it was very much, it was enjoyable at times, but definitely over the top at times. Like not very well controlled.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it was bad or anything. It's just, I mean, again, it's like perfectly average. It's just like it's just wrong at certain times, right at certain times, atmosphere building at certain times, in your face at certain times, and like I just don't really understand the philosophy behind it. I don't. I mean, even with like the Inception kind of dong, dong, I kind of got what he was going for at least.
With the
But
music.
yeah, and I
Inception.
yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, just for to say one last thing about the rating is, for me personally, and maybe I should change this because we do this so often now. For me, a movie once it's below 7, it's basically not a good movie because it's not because 7 is okay, it's average. But yeah, I do feel like this one it was enjoyable to watch. It had interesting, fun elements, but it was definitely not as good as a Tarantino, revenge movie of sorts.
that's funny.
This is gonna sound whatever it's gonna sound like, but I almost think you shouldn't change anything about your rating system because, like you've said many times before, if you don't bother watching subpar movies, then anything that you deem as less than a 7, it means that anything that you deem as a 7 and to you is completely average.
Anything under
That
7,
must mean
I'm basically not recommending.
That's what I'm saying. But if you deem something to be a 7, which in your eyes is average, and you only watch, you don't ever go out of your way to watch anything that you don't think is going to already be good ahead of time, that means that this is probably a pretty darn good movie. So a 7 from you means that people should probably go see that.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. 7.
So
definitely
it all kind of
7.
works itself out.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, this movie I would say 5 to a 6. I'm happy with, but yeah, no. Anyways, so anything else as far as
I don't think I personally
spoilers?
haven't seen anything else that this guy's made. I
What the
can't.
director made?
Yeah, I can't talk to anything else. So, yeah, we could just go right ahead.
Alexei.
I mean, there were certain aspects of the movie that I thought were pretty strong. I mean, again, it was shot well. I feel like the shot that they kept using of the tank driver in the tank could have probably been. I just kind of feel like they probably did all of his scenes in the seat of the tank in one day and just had him like read the lines and just use that. I mean, they never changed anything at all.
I mean, like the size of the shot,
right?
angles.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the camera choices were straight out of Dunkirk without the intrigue of how they actually managed to do it. I did appreciate that they established their finite amount of ammunition throughout the last half of the film and stuck to it. That's actually not the easiest thing to do in a movie. I mean, even Kevin Costner. I was just rewatching Open Range, and there's the beginning of the shootout where he's using one 6-shooter and he gets 9 shots out of it for some reason. But yeah, it's. I mean, it's good that the filmmakers had the wherewithal to create constraints for their protagonists and maintain those constraints, stick to them, and and I'm kind of stopping myself, yeah, because like I almost said like no Deus Ex Machina, but like there was a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina at the end, but
Yeah.
a little bit, kind of, like uh, survived a
Well, it
gunshot
did
and a grenade
literally.
blast.
It literally came from a machine.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yuck!
yeah.
Yuck! 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 No.
Yeah. And also the strange thing about a Russian, a Soviet officer during Stalinist Russia reciting the Lord's Prayer during
Yeah.
the battle. I mean, that's where I was like, this is bloated Russian propaganda right now, because I mean, like the Orthodox Russian Church is back in power. You know, Putin's a Russian Orthodox and so on and so forth, but he has certain references for the Soviet Union. So, like this is the perfect thing of like, like Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote about people who didn't even remember how to do the cross symbol for the Catholic Church in the gulags, because they were so heavily forbidden to do anything related to Christianity, and then
Mm.
suddenly you're getting this Soviet era movie in 2018, 2019 under Putin, which is basically like, hey, look at the glory of Russia, and hey, also these guys were still Christians too, and like, I mean, yeah, he's in a tank and he's with his buddies, and they probably weren't gonna turn him into, the
You're saying
to
it's a
the
little
government.
anachronistic.
It's frankly unbelievable
Yeah.
that somebody would be reciting the Lord's Prayer in a tank among Soviets. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I don't buy it.
I think the movie has some really wonderful action sequences, particularly if you're looking for a tank movie, because there's so few. Really, I think that the Brad Pitt movie Fury kind of became the new gold standard when it came out, which was about 4 years prior to this one, and um, you know, there are other movies that largely focus on tank combat, but not very many, to be honest. There really aren't. I think there's more. There's probably more submarine movies than there are tank movies, and it's that is what it is. But anyway, my point is that if this is something that you're interested in, it's certainly pretty good in that regard. I mean, I think that once again using it as the standard, I think that the movie Fury has at least one, tank combat scene in the middle of it that is more meaningful, more gritty, a little bit better done, and a little slightly more realistic. Not much more, but a little bit more. A little less propaganda-ish and stuff like that. But I mean, again, if you're looking for that kind of action, that's like the only big scene in the movie that's like that. Whereas like this movie's got 2 or 3 scenes that are just not far behind that. It's pretty darn good. Yeah, as we stated before, this movie is definitely, in terms of its action style, I'd say that this movie is definitely a post-Matrix film. It's got a lot of moments where it's going into slow motion and the camera is panning around the action in the middle of stuff and things like that. And it's and for good and bad. It's
It's
interesting.
garish at times.
It,
Like,
it
Yeah,
is.
it's
It is. I will go that far. I will say that. Yes.
yeah, after the first few times they probably could have like just let it go
Yeah.
for sure. But
yeah,
I was gonna say what Matt said and you said, it is one of the strongest points of the movie is the fact that there's strategy, that there's
Yeah.
sequences, that they discuss it, they come up with cool idea, and that kind of takes you into the world of what combat is. And much like Braveheart and Star Wars.
Sure.
All these big movies that actually have, unlike the prequel Star Wars that like had just like a huge mess, everybody shooting at everybody. It's like, because movies, I feel like Marvel movies definitely tend to be very messy and not very strategic.
Let's not get into that again.
Yeah. I mean, there's,
Okay.
I'm sure within them there's a few things, but they're just a bit messy. Yeah, and funny enough, I listened to the MCU episode and I was like, I don't think I brought that up. They are pretty messy most times, but yeah, I like movies that are orderly, that you can actually comprehend what's going on, and it's clever. It's like, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought of that idea. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I mean, toward the end of the movie, there was that, like, and I think it was one of the best moments where they're doing kind of an urban tank combat sequence, and
It really helped freshen things
yeah,
up.
right, and they realize that they're kind of boxed in, and the commander asks, like, who's the daredevil, and one of the guys just says, "Don't ask, just give the order."
Yeah.
and and I mean, that was a really good moment. And then like, yeah, I mean, there was a certain amount of keen strategy done there, and I do give the movie points for that. I mean, it probably would have been like a 3 if it weren't for that scene. But
Just for that alone?
yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't think it was that good. I mean, I appreciated the scene, but I don't think it saved the movie or anything.
Well, I mean, the whole scene about, like, did you make a wish, and yes, to love you for the rest of my life, like, that just dropped it down to like a 2.
I was gonna go over that later. I mean, I didn't want to tread on that just yet. But no, getting back to the guy going on that little mission though, and
Yeah.
he's gonna drop a grenade into the tank. I loved that scene. I think it was definitely a strong scene, like you said. And then what I really liked was that after their plan is somewhat successful and they manage to get out of the trap that they're in, more or less, and kill one of their opponents at the same time in this very close range sort of thing, they're basically stunned, and several other enemy tanks, slowly make their way over to them. It's an all is lost moment, and I hope that that's the scene Gil was talking about, or you were talking about with the Deus Ex Machina thing. But I didn't have any problem with that guy, the injured guy who dropped the grenade into the tank and killed all the other crew.
Yeah.
I didn't have any problem with him showing up at the last second and saving the day. I just think that after he manages to single-handedly move the tank to where he could make a difference, then change seats, presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
move
that's
the
a lot
turret.
of.
No, I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. He can do it, because they don't show how. They don't even show him until he fires the shell to make it dramatic. So we don't know how long he was there. He could have gotten there, and the enemies wouldn't even have been bothered by him until he fired on them. So I don't see any problem with it. It's just he had already gotten shot. He got shot doing his mission, dropping the grenade in there and everything. And then the tanks fired on him. Like, it's a great moment. He should die valiantly.
Yeah.
Instead they have a cop out thing where at the end the two guys are like, we're gonna have a little standoff thing or whatever, and dramatic ending, and he's like, let me go pick up my man, or something like that is what he says, and then he's on a stretcher for the rest of the movie. If they had fired on his tank and he blew up after saving the day, that would have been a wonderful ending to his character. We don't need him to be, I mean, come on. What are we really trying to do here? That was a little ridiculous to me, was simply that he survived it. But going into what Matt was saying. Okay, so I don't even want to touch on the dialogue. I completely agree with you. That was campy as shit. But I do want to say this. As unrealistic as it was, I was happy to see where that cheesy storyline went with the girl. I thought it was cool that her character did something, in the story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if my biggest criticism of this entire movie is that sex scene was way too tame. I'm
Oh yeah.
serious. I'm serious. It was some light PG-13 garbage. This is a war film. I want to see something like in Enemy at the Gates, where it's like they're dirty and they're like they got to do this out in the field, which is where they were. Spoiler. Anyway, the point is, like,
I also want to see Rachel Weisz.
Yeah, well, Rachel Weisz would have been better. That's true, but we all know that, But
I'm sure she could have pulled it off.
yeah, and then
just to pull it out.
Oh God, no, but in the scene, like they have this nice little PG-13 kind of thing of them laying with each other and stuff like that, and then whatever, and then afterward, he's got like a sheet over him, and the camera, it's not like an L-shaped sheet, so that's kind of nice, but still, like the camera, that the framing of the shot, you see about most of his upper chest and shoulder, and you see this gnarly looking like scar, because this guy has been through 7 years of captivity. He's tried escaping a bunch of times, maybe not 7 years. He said he tried to escape 7 times. I don't know how much time it was, probably 4 or 5 years, something like that. But anyway, the point is he's been through it. He's been in tanks that exploded, and all this stuff like that. They needed to have this sex scene needed to be more like Terminator. If you guys remember, you got Michael Biehn, and you got Linda Hamilton, and she's been this, this mousy girl this whole time, kind of a valley girl looking thing. And then like she's maturing over the course of the movie, and they get to this moment where it's like they're so into each other finally, and he's protecting her, and then he pull his shirt off, and he's just got like scars all over him, and her hands are going over his back and stuff like that. That's a sexy scene right there. That's a great sex scene. That's like top 20 greatest sex scenes ever filmed. Good job, James Cameron. That was a great scene. This needed some more Terminator in it. How can you not remember that scene? It's outstanding. Anyway, the point is, this was tame. This movie this scene could have really elevated this movie, and it would have made you probably feel a little bit better about that terrible dialogue that came before and after it. But I just wanted to say, aside from that, though, oh my gosh, I was laughing so hard after that, because I'm telling you, they get it on, and then minutes later, they find out that the enemy's getting close, and he's like telling the girl, all right, listen up, Coyote Ugly. This tank is like no girls allowed, and you don't have the password anymore. So, you got to go do your walk of shame through the woods while we go have some fun, kill some krauts. He just drops her off. He don't even give her a gun. I mean, can you imagine?
Something about the woods will be, will hide her.
Sure. I'm sure that's what he was saying. I'm sure he made it sound better than what I just said, but that's essentially what he did. He's like, all right, we just finished. You go walk it off. I mean, it's a good thing there weren't a bunch of other people there to see her. They'd be slut shaming her through the woods. It's terrible.
Yeah, okay, all of that is hilarious and correct. Another thing that I gotta launch on this is just like my complete lack of belief that a Soviet soldier, having defeated a Nazi, after all that, would have like not just executed him on the spot.
Oh, you're talking about that thing at the very end?
Yeah, like
that was a little weird, wasn't it?
I mean, like, no,
a moment of respect.
I don't think it was earned.
No. I mean, I don't know what the filmmakers think. I mean, actually, I don't know how well they teach Russian history in Russian schools or anything, but I mean, like, the way that World War II was fought on the Soviet side was so freaking brutal, even to their own men.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you're going to charge into a bunch of enemy machine guns, and you're going to die, probably. And if you retreat, you're going to run into our own machine guns gunning you down for being a coward, and you're going to die. So you better breach the enemy's side and probably die by getting stabbed by a freaking bayonet or like shot in the face or something. I mean, like the Soviet. The Soviet side of World War II was a complete freaking meat grinder. And no, I do not believe that a Soviet soldier, having gone through all that, would finally like reach his hand out to an opposing Nazi soldier. I don't believe that for a second. And I think that it wouldn't have been a bad decision for him to just take his rifle and shoot the guy in the face.
I would have liked. And I know I'm just once again referencing another better movie, but like I kind of would have liked something like the end of Enemy at the Gates. I like that at the end they both crawl out of the tank. Well, one crawls out, the other one climbs out of the tank.
Yeah,
and he's got his gun, and he's got him at his mercy. Like he can't even reach for his sidearm. He's got him dead to rights. Give it a pause, eye contact, and then just kill him. That way it's poignant, it's meaningful, and it's over. Like I don't know what their goal was with that last little. I mean, I guess I could kind of see what they were going for with the character and everything, but like Matt said, I mean, it's not super believable, and it's not like it's really. I don't know. They didn't earn it. So
yeah,
but
no,
I don't know.
well, that's a good point. I mean, I think if you want to talk about like a better version of this movie, because I read this into the movie when it wasn't there, but what you kind of get from their relationship, for one thing, I mean, that German officer,
Jaeger.
he's what's his name?
Klaus Jaeger.
Klaus Jaeger. He's an idiot. Like, there's no way. It was a really stupid plan to have him like train others by being in an actual tank, even if he wasn't going to give him ammunition. Still, like it's he should have like tricked the tank to be not capable of shooting anything, or something. But in any case, that aside,
that's a good point. Yeah.
But that aside, let's say if it was a better movie, if it was a movie about like a very smart German officer, say like Lanza and Inglourious Bastards,
Mm-hmm.
And you have this Russian officer who, from the get-go, you see that he's different. He's very good looking, which I guess makes him different. But you also see that he's very very charismatic. He knows how to motivate people. There's the example in the beginning. He's very smart. He has good tactics.
Knowledgeable.
He's got knowledgeable, good instincts, good under pressure. All these elements. And let's say that you show examples of the German officer being in a similar way, but maybe he's just not as good as him, and he wants to like almost out of respect for him, he wants to learn from him. To me, like what I was reading into it about their relationship is that, and sometimes this happens in movies, like The Pianist. There's a little bit of it. Like the scene where he plays on the piano or something, and there's a German officer that listens to or a German soldier that listens to the music and appreciates it.
At the very end.
And The Pianist, I'm not sure. I haven't seen it in a very long time. I should revisit it.
Okay.
But in any case, it's the idea being that Russian and German culture is so rich with sophistication and artistic merit, poetry. There's such great cultures that it's sad that their talents and their sophistication, their intellect is used for this and not for something that's more lofty, more worthy, more could actually like maybe can benefit the next generation, whether it's an art piece or inventing a piece of technology, or instead of just killing each other. So that's kind of what I was reading into it. Like these two are kind of above the fray. Like they would be, they would be artists, they would be scientists, they would be people that would contribute like well to society. great leaders. Like if they were living at different times, like there's goodness in them to some degree because they know when they see something that's worth appreciating.
They're ambitious.
But it doesn't but being this movie what it is, it doesn't go into it too far. It's mostly me while I was reading into it, just because I felt like they're both kind of having this mind game of like sophistication, and I was like thinking about the pianist and Germans, Russians. That's why I thought of it. But the movie gives you none of this, so
it definitely could have gone down that road. It would have been nice. Yeah,
it's an option. I know it's not the same movie. I mean, I'm seeing the poster. They're like advertising that it was an IMAX and everything. It's the type of movie, which, by the way, also relating to the sex scene. Maybe they just, there's this whole thing about like violence can be very bloody, and it would not be as big of an issue than if you had full nudity. Like because then less people would be able to watch it in the theaters or something. So I don't know if it was just a calculation of, we gotta like limit the sex scenes so we can put it on TV, for reruns, and we can like have it in more theaters. Like it might have been that kind of a calculation.
Maybe. Just to clarify though about what I was saying about that scene, I'm not specific. I mean, I think that this movie could have benefited from some nice, full frontal nudity, but that's not even really what I'm asking for. I'm not looking for graphic, gratuitous stuff. I just think that it was a weak, tame sex scene. It was like really weak. I think it could have benefited from being a better shot, more sexy, beautiful kind of sex scene. We don't even need to have seen any nudity in it. Just give me something better is all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's the movie is rated TV-14.
So that must be like their version of like PG-13.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So I'm sure it's part of it, because if they had like a full-on sex scene, then they can only be playing late at night or blah blah blah. Who knows?
Let me rephrase. I didn't think about this ahead of time, so I don't have like a list or anything. I actually might somewhere on my computer, to be honest, if I really were to search. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm sure there's PG-13 movies out there with better sex scenes that I could use as an example for what I'm talking about. I'm not saying it needs to be gratuitous or graphic in its nudity or use of nudity or sexuality. I just think it was a weak sex scene. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that would have been nice if she was, if you think, oh, he's the man and he's like the tank leader and blah blah blah, but then she does something like go down on him or something and really takes him off guard. Just really kind of take command of, like, because women, it's they can look frail like in the moment in war, but once you get them in bed, like they can really take you to town.
What was it in there's some wonderful line in Game of Thrones when Tyrion sends his squire guy to the brothel for the first time.
Yeah.
He says he's like, because he knows it's his first time, and he comes back, and he and his sellsword guy, Braun or whatever his name is, the first thing they ask him is something to the effect of like, did you something to the effect of like, did you conquer or did she bring you to your knees or something like that? And I just thought that was so insightful. I was like, oh man, that's cool.
Yeah. That's like, in relation to the battle scenes. I mean, yeah, if we want to keep talking about that scene, I mean, the battle scenes were more plentiful.
Yes.
I mean, I have I have a serious problem with the handling of like Michael Bay visuals, with even when they're like fictional movies, like dealing with World War II. I mean, even Michael Bay made 16 hours, and
I think it's 13 hours.
13 hours, yeah. And I mean, even Michael Bay dialed it back more than this movie did in terms of like bullet time and like, hey, look at how cool it is with these these missiles being launched, and I mean, at some point it just becomes gratuitous, and your subject matter is such that you just kind of have to make it feel like a battle. I mean, there's no way that you can really make it feel like a battle, but I mean, people talk about American, you know, military movies being like propaganda and like recruitment tools and everything like that. I remember when I went in to see Black Hawk Down for the first time, and I saw it in theaters, and this guy took his son, and I just kind of got into talking with him before the movie started, and his son was like 10 years old, and I was just asked, I just kind of managed to get him the question like, why'd you bring your son? And he was just like, well, he's convinced that he wants to be in the military. I'm showing him this so he'll choose differently.
Huh.
Like, uh, I mean, you can make arguments that like Top Gun Maverick. Actually, you could make good arguments that Top Gun Maverick is like a military recruitment tool because a lot of people have been signing up for the Air Force, even though it's a movie about Navy pilots. But you can't expect Americans to be that smart. Um, but still they don't. I mean, there's a certain respect to, particularly World War II. I just don't really. I mean, I kind of get turned off the moment that I see that bullet time kind of Matrix kind of stuff in a World War II movie. Like, it's that moment where, like, Truffaut was mostly right when he said that it's almost impossible to make an anti-war movie because the cinema glorifies everything that it touches. But that's the thing, like, we should at least be trying to make neutral war movies, or like, war movies that just kind of show you what the hell goes on. And this is either that or do some kind of like really hyperbolic uh bullshit like Inglorious Bastards, where like we all know that we're not watching history, we all know that we're not watching how things really were. This is all just like getting off on killing Nazis and all that shit. But I mean, this movie was trying to toe a line that I don't think should be tried to be towed, which is trying to be genuine at the same time that is trying to be sexy and visually, um, action packed, trying to do it like it is like a Matrix or something like that. And I think that that's just, I I have a problem with that. I don't know. I don't know if I'm insane or wrong or anything like that, but that's just my take.
Oh no, no,
I
it
don't. I
definitely
don't think that your
glorifies
opinion is
war.
wrong.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't think that your opinion of it is wrong, and I don't even think that there's how can I put this? There's kind of like that famous story of like after Tom Cruise made the first Top Gun film, it was like super successful. Obviously, it
Yeah.
it like Matt was kind of alluding to it earlier. It actually caused a massive like bump in recruitment and everything like that for the Navy and stuff like that. Um, you know, and then after talking to, I think it was Paul Newman or something like that in The Color of Money or whatever, he felt bad about making this movie that was kind of a pro-war type of movie. So then he went off and did what was it, Born on 4th of July or something like that, because he
Yeah.
kind of wanted to balance the scales. But I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I can't speak for Tom Cruise or anything like that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with making a movie like Top Gun. I just think that you'd hope that the audience is going into it with the right mindset and coming out of it with the right message. I mean, they have a movie like that has its place, I guess is all I'm saying. And then what you were saying in regards to that and this movie, kind of trying to straddle that line. I don't think I would agree with you that it shouldn't be attempted. I just think that this movie attempted it. I think that they pulled off all of the action stuff. Now, and I know you said you weren't super fond of it in a movie like this, but I think I'm just going to throw this out there. If this movie had all the same action, which I agree could have been grittier and a little more real, I think they went a little too far with the some of the bullet timey looking stuff. But if you'd have just taken this exact same movie, kept all the action precisely the same, and then just made some story changes to make the movie a little more grounded, a little more realistic, and therefore have a little stronger punch at the end. That's all I think it would have needed for me to bump it up to a higher rating. I mean, I'm not saying it would have been a phenomenal movie or anything, but I think it would have really succeeded in what you were talking about of trying to be this like action movie with this kind of a stylized action, but then also trying to talk, kind of at least touch on the realities of war and be a little more realistic and stuff like that. I think to me at least, I'm just going to say that where it loses me in terms of its realism and stuff like that is not the battles, even though I get what you're saying about that. It loses me more like in those later scenes we talked about, like where the guy does this crazy thing and then somehow manages to survive it. And then like the really truncated, abbreviated love story between its characters that feels super forced and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff to me where I'm just like, okay, if that's where you want to go with this movie, fine. It's not what I would have done.
I honestly think it's just one of those things where, I mean, like, okay, you look at the Finnish movie that just came out, like Sisu, like,
I really want to see that one.
If you're gonna go that over the top with like, hey, we're just gonna have fun killing Nazis during World War II, go that over the top. Like, go absolutely John Wick style. Like make John Wick look like a pussy. That's what they did with that movie. This movie, again, I just don't think it knew what it wanted to be. I don't think that the director knew what this movie was supposed to be. And it had those elements of hyper, it had the moments of realism. It had the moments, where it's grounded, and then suddenly, but I mean, almost every round that was shot out of those tanks was like bullet time.
Yeah, almost.
Every round in the freaking movie.
Like I said, I agree. It went too far.
Not to mention, I mean, like how many times did like the bullets pierce their like tank, but for some reason theirs doesn't explode. It just greases off of them, or like it just rattles their ears. But it felt like they're a bit like blessed, from above or something.
Well, it is an underdog story, and I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Like, if you guys saw Fury, right? Both of you?
Yes.
I mean,
I didn't, but
okay.
but
I
I'll
mean,
believe you
that one's a very realistic, tank movie, and they depict some of the same stuff. So I'm no expert, but I'm just going to say, based on what I've seen and read, it seems like in World War II we didn't have as sophisticated of rounds for these tanks. So I think if it hit an oblong object, there's probably like a 1 in 4 chance that it's going to careen off the side rather than pierce into it and blow it up. But because they depicted similar stuff in those movies as well. I don't think the number of times that stuff careened off their tank was anywhere near realistic. Maybe
exactly.
if they cut it in half, then we would have just felt tension. You know, it would have been like, God, these guys are lucky. But by about like the time it gets to the end of the first big battle scene, you're like, whew, man, they got a real greased up tank or something.
They're a bunch of atheists who have God on their side. Also, Fury has the added benefit of, you know, Shia LaBeouf actually pulled out his own tooth for that movie. So
no, I'm just not so sure if that actually benefited the movie or not. Now, I'm not saying that Shia LaBeouf didn't benefit the movie. He was very good in that movie. But man, when I heard that story, I was like, dude, seriously?
Yeah. No, okay. If I'm going to, I gotta work this in. If you're going to watch a movie about a Soviet tank, that I would highly recommend, it's The Beast.
I've heard good things about it.
Probably from me.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned that at some point.
Yeah, it also has Stephen Baldwin in it. So
oh, I like Stephen Baldwin.
What year is that movie?
1988. Yeah.
Hmm.
Also, it was shot in Israel.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, you know, Stephen Baldwin. So, like, nobody got shot and killed in the production of the movie.
The safer Baldwin.
Oh my God. I was like trying to figure out where on earth you were going with that. Wow. One thing I just wanted to say, just as a slight criticism of this movie, especially because it was done so well in the movie Fury. It's a little odd to me that you're going to make a World War II tank movie that's all about tanks in World War II and is a total underdog movie, because in both of the major conflicts that make up the action of this story, in both situations, they're grossly outnumbered all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's like you've already got all that going for you. And if you know anything about the history in World War II, one of the things that was interesting about this whole tank stuff is that the Nazis, the Germans, had these really enormous and insanely powerful behemoth tanks, the Tiger tanks, and it's odd to me that they don't have a single one in this movie. You know, I mean, that's like just a thing, you know, about that, the warfare of that, you know, of that time and everything. You know, you see them in Saving Private Ryan, and they make a very big deal about them in Fury and stuff like that. And I just thought it was odd that maybe they just did it to make it more fair. I don't know. Maybe more believable. I don't know. It's odd to me that that they have these battles and the whole time they're fighting against like I think they're the Panzer tanks or something like that, or various different kinds of Panzer tanks. I don't know, but the smaller kind of medium-sized tanks is what they're fighting up against, and it's like it's just a little odd to me. I was very surprised that they didn't ever have a Tiger tank in there.
Can you refresh my memory? Was there any point where Yeager asked to just have, like, I mean, I know that he was on a plane for a while, but like just asked, like, hey, can you just like bomb the thing from the air?
That would have been nice, right? I mean, air superiority being what it was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they even had that in Saving Private Ryan. You know,
absolutely. Well,
so,
then again, you know what? Maybe they justified that by the fact that even when he was up in the air, they never spotted him.
Yeah.
But maybe there should have been a line of dialogue, like have them waiting or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or you know, fuck you, you made a really dumb decision, and no, you've got to do this on your own. We're not going to waste our resources on you.
They did have one line of dialogue about how he needs to hurry up and fix his mistake. And I was kind of like, I remember thinking to myself, you know, this guy messed up royally.
Yeah.
mean, like, I think he's they should have even focused on this more. I don't know, but I think he got in those tanks and got his men together to go hunt them down in the hopes that his life would even be spared, let alone his command. I can't imagine you'd send anyone into battle under that guy's command anymore after that.
But I mean, doesn't that even raise even more questions?
I don't know.
You know, like, wait. You just gave a bunch of Soviet tankers a tank that we had, and our solution is to send you after them with more tanks that we have.
Well, I mean, I
mean,
guess in his defense, he had proven himself as a very effective tank commander. He just,
yeah, right. I mean, it just kind of seems like geez, I don't even know a proper idiom for that.
I
uh,
I like what I want to repeat what Gil said earlier. I know that this is one of those ham sandwich kind of things that basically ruins the entire movie once you think about it. But it should be mentioned that a smarter commander would have, even if he was not going to watch them, not going to take interest in the fact that there might be shells still in the captured tank, things of all that nature. The let them have their little funeral, which allowed them to sneak the ordnance away, and all that stuff. Like, you let them rebuild the tank up to its maximum power and everything like that. I mean, you could just weld something onto the end of the barrel, and their
yeah,
whole plan would be destroyed. Like, I mean, if you're not planning on ever having them shoot the thing, you can I don't know, there's a term for that. Like, you can like spike the barrel or something, and like have it inoperable.
yeah. Yeah, did they actually do that in the movie at one point to an enemy tank?
Oh,
uh,
somebody
uh,
threw some hand grenades onto one.
yeah,
I don't know.
it seems like a much cheaper solution than a massive convoy to go
Yeah.
capture a rogue tank with live ammunition. I mean, it's I don't know. It has a lot. It actually has more problems now that I'm thinking about it. I'm still going to keep my rating at a 5. I'm not going to be that flippant about it, but it just has a lot of problems, like logic problems. I think ethical problems. It it's just like uh, uh, it
I don't know. I agree with you that it could be a lot better, but I came for the tank action and it delivered.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what people pretty much come from, and I think it's what the director came for as well.
yeah.
Seems like with the emphasis on all the slow motion. Yeah, and it's one of those movies. It is what it is. It's serving a certain purpose. It's not going beyond that. It's got flaws, but it is enjoyable at parts. And I did just look up the soundtrack. There's like a whole soundtrack of like 20 songs of the I might listen to it just to see. It's like this all this stuff sounds very derivative, very familiar.
Yeah.
Um, anyways.
I mean, again, they did incorporate Tchaikovsky and everything.
Oh,
So,
so yeah, so some of it was maybe more familiar than other.
but I mean, you can't you can't blame a Russian filmmaker for incorporating Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, no, no. But the music
It's
itself also, like, it's not that it was bad. It was just not appropriate at times. Like, it was just,
yeah,
yeah, not well calibrated, I think
yeah.
I'd said. But yeah, it's one of those things. It is what it is.